During the course of the history of an airport, it's certain it will have its ups and downs. But the one constant factor, especially among prominent air hubs in the countries, is that an airport is often the first and last impression of a country. Along with that, a particular airport may have the only connection to certain attractions and cities. Aside from the value of being a part of your next trip, one unique thing about airports is it's one of those unique places that can host a lot of emotions amongst people. And the airport that I will be featuring in this video often is the venue of emotional goodbyes, the last place that family members see off loved ones heading to faraway foreign lands to not only support but provide a better life for their children and their families. Its deficiencies are highly publicized, and I have done videos on it before, but this airport for decades has played a major role in the Philippine aviation industry, and that airport is the Manila International Airport. For this particular video, I will be discussing the history and the developments of the Manila International Airport over the decades as the major hub of the Philippine aviation industry. The Manila Airport at its current location is actually not the first location of the main airport of Manila as we delve into the overall aviation history of the Philippines. The whole Philippines and Manila itself had multiple airfields with grass and dirt runways. Most of the operations of these airfields were done by private companies. A prominent example of this was the Iloilo Negros Air Express Company, which was founded in 1932 by the Lopez family, making it the first airline not just in the Philippines but also Asia as well. After launching its maiden Iloilo to Manila flight services, it was one of the companies who spearheaded the development of some of the airports of the Philippines, the prime example of this being the old Bacolod Airport. The use of multiple private-owned airfields would change in 1935 when the first official airport for the city of Manila was opened, the Grace Park Airfield located in Caloocan. This airport in particular would serve as the primary hub and the jumpstart for another airline, the Philippine Air Taxi Service, which, like the Iloilo Negros Express Company, it too was a predecessor to Philippine Airlines. That same year, another avenue of air services would be opened, but this time in Manila Bay through the use of seaplanes, especially by Pan American, initially docking at the Manila Hotel before moving further south to the area of Cavite. The airport developments during this time would not be complete, as in 1937 another airfield would later open, named Nielsen Field. This airfield no longer exists, as the area it now once occupied now makes up the modern-day business district of Makati. Its old runways are now known as Ayala Boulevard and the Paseo de Rojas. However, if you do happen to get a chance to go to the Makati area, there is still a trace of the airport left, with the old passenger terminal now a fine dining restaurant at the Ayala Triangle Park. It was actually at this airfield where the first flight of Philippine Airlines took place in 1941, taking off for the city of Baguio. Now obviously these facilities no longer exist, as all airport operations in Manila would later be consolidated to one facility that we all know today. The current location of the Manila Airport as we know today borders the area of Pasay and Parañaque, and like some airfields in Asia, it had its start as a US military installation. Its initial name was actually Camp Nichols, later to be known as simply Nichols Field, and it was the then US Army Air Services who built the initial northwest and southeast facing runways, runway 13 and 31. Like many of the military installations during World War II, it was a prime target especially for the Japanese forces during the invasion of the Philippines. And during the subsequent Japanese occupation, it was a military base but also had American prisoners of war. Following the return of American forces and the subsequent granting of Philippine independence in 1946, the Philippine government would get more control of the airfield, and the Philippine Air Force was formed with its main headquarters at what is now known as Villamor Air Base on the eastern side of the airport. This would lead to further developments of the Philippine aviation industry, as Nichols Field would then become the primary hub of Philippine aviation in 1948. A terminal building was built, and Philippine Airlines was among the leading airlines to make the shift to Nielsen Field, a place it has made home for over 70 years now. In the years and decades following World War II, the Philippines and Asia would see a transformation, and the Nichols Field reflected that, and some started to refer it now as Manila Airport. The developments really began in 1933 when the runway 6 and 24, the long runway for international flights, was opened. Then in 1961, the centerpiece of the airport, at the time a modern passenger terminal, was built, along with other facilities such as the control tower. This new terminal was located at the current location of Terminal 2, and by accounts online, it was described as a modern marvel in the Philippines at the time. Designed by Filipino architect Federico Ilustre, the 22,000 square meter terminal featured a viewing deck to see what was going on the apron and the first escalator in the Philippines. However, this terminal was damaged by two fires, the first in 1972 and later in 1985. In the immediate aftermath of the 1972 fire, a smaller terminal was built and served international flights until it was converted to domestic operations upon the completion of the terminal we now know as Terminal 1. The developments for Manila Airport's Terminal 1 actually began in 1972 via an executive order issued by then-President Ferdinand Marcos. Terminal 1 would later be opened in 1981 and would feature an area of around 73,000 square meters and more parking spots for aircraft. Designed to accommodate around 4.5 million passengers per year, it was an architectural marvel at the time. The developments of Terminal 1 happened during a period of the Philippine martial law, which saw strong opposition by Filipinos who opposed this rule. This would lead to a fateful day with events that happened at Manila Airport's Terminal 1 that would change the course of Philippine history. This event would take place on August 21, 1983, which prominent opposition leader Benigno Aquino was assassinated at the gate after arriving in Manila following his exile in the United States. This event galvanized the opposition to Marcos and led to the subsequent People Power Revolution, which led to his ouster. 4 years later, in 1987, the Philippine government, under the administration of his wife Corazon Aquino, renamed the airport in his honor, the Ninoy Aquino International Airport, which is why if you look at Philippine media reports or signage around it, you'll often see the shortened version of it as NAIA. Following the period of the Philippine martial law, plans to develop the Manila Airport to meet the growth of the Philippine aviation industry was already being made in the late 1980s. While airports in the secondary cities such as Cebu and Clark were beginning to see international flights, Manila Airport remained the favorite hub for the new upstart Philippine airlines, including Cebu Pacific, Grand Air, and Air Philippines. Among the major developments in the 1990s was the opening of Terminal 2 in 1998. Since it coincided with the celebrations of the 100th anniversary of the Philippine independence from Spain, it's often referred to as the Centennial Terminal, with the main tenant, Philippine Airlines, shifting its main domestic and international hub at the terminal. Around the same time, there was plans to build a much larger terminal, on the eastern part taking up a portion of the Villamor Air Base. This new terminal would be known as Terminal 3 with a design floor area of around 182,500 square meters, the largest at the airport and also the Philippines overall. The terminal was completed in 2002 but faced a string of political and legal battles. Further mired by technical issues, it would be 6 years later in 2008 when the terminal finally opened. Among the first tenants was Cebu Pacific and Air Philippines, which shifted their domestic and international flight operations to the new terminal. Besides the issues surrounding the opening of the Terminal 3, local and foreign observers have noted of the growing problems at Manila Airport, which to be fair I have covered and discussed in previous videos. Among the issues was in 2013 when the airport was named by travel publication Sleeping in Airports as the world's worst airport. Also, over the years, the airport has been the subject of security advisories, especially from major governments such as from the US. Then there's some scandals such as the Tanambala or planted bullets scandal during the mid-2010s, which, with the coverage in local and foreign media, made travelers at the airport more on guard with their personal items. The airport does get its fair share of criticism, with a wide variety of issues such as flight delays and congestion in the terminals, the difficulties at times to get public transportation, and facilities to make connections much more easier. To the best of their abilities, the Manila Airport Authority has taken steps to improve and upgrade the airport, most notably the upgrades at Terminal 1 and ongoing work going on right now at Terminal 2. To ease the congestion at Terminal 1, the primary international terminal, several international airlines have been shifted to Terminal 3. On a more positive note, Manila Airport has been the focal point of the developments of the Philippine aviation industry. In recent years, the domestic and international flight network has grown, contributing greatly to the growth of the Philippine tourism industry, but also opening up more connections for Filipino travelers in the country. The major developments of Manila Airport and the Philippine aviation industry has allowed the airport to see a record 47.9 million passengers in 2019. The airport served over 277,000 aircraft movements and handled 460,130 metric tons of cargo. Manila Airport's main source of growth has been the international air traffic, as international passenger traffic numbers have nearly doubled since compared to 2012. While other air hubs in the Philippines are growing, Manila Airport still plays an important role and is the busiest airport in the country by a wide margin. It is the main hub of the operations of the major Philippine carriers Philippine Airlines, Cebu Pacific, and Philippines Air Asia, and also the main hub for the smaller airlines Air Swift and Skyjet. Along with supporting the commercial air traffic to and from Manila, it still remains as the Philippine Air Force headquarters at Villamor Air Base. Over the years, Manila Airport has experienced a growth that now sees the airport operating well beyond its capacity limits. This discussion is one of the most interesting in terms of aviation in Asia, as there are several projects that are ongoing or being planned to help boost the air traffic capacity at Manila or to replace the Manila International Airport in its current form. There has been a previous proposal to add a third runway to the airport, though that plan is met with points that there just isn't any room for another runway. In 2018, a group of 7 Philippine-based conglomerates made a proposal to rehabilitate the airport, though during the summer they backed out, and now that plan is being spearheaded by GMR Megawide, the same group who has worked on the developments at the Cebu Airport. And then there are the mega airport projects that could replace Manila Airport, including San Miguel Group's new Manila Airport in Bulacan, and the plans for a Sangley Airport. These developments have been years in the making, and for many Filipinos and those who frequently travel to the country, it can't come soon enough. The crowding and delays are the common complaints, and you could look no further to some of the comment sections in previous videos related to the airport. With one main runway for large aircraft, a shutdown of that one runway could lead to problems for the overall Philippine airspace. And this was highlighted by the incident of Xiamen Air Flight MF8667, which skidded off the runway upon landing on a rainy night. Due to the closure of the main runway, flights had to be diverted and the runway operations were limited to smaller aircraft. Any situation like this usually would lead to further delays and cancellations of major flights to Philippine domestic destinations and other parts of the world, which makes it much more imperative to get the projects up and running for the new airports. Should any of the new airport projects, such as the new Manila Airport in Bulacan, gets completed, Manila Airport right now would see the end of its major role in the aviation industry, though with its location to the major business districts of Mandaluyong, Taguig, and Makati, I won't be surprised if there would be still limited flight operations while 24/7 operations would be shifted to the other air hub. This is something that I could further elaborate on a future video, and I definitely would love to do this. For me, this is one of the most interesting airport histories I have ever done, especially after previously covering some topics and news related as to what the future holds for airport developments for the city of Manila. While the future of the Manila airport scene is likely the most interesting to watch in Asia, the Manila Airport has seen the good and bad of the Philippine history, especially during the last half of the 20th century and the 21st century. Besides the problems and criticisms, I do want to mention some personal notes that I usually see at Manila Airport. Aside from being the main gateway to the Philippines and the major connecting hub to the other provinces, it's often the small things that happen at the airport which shapes the lives of individual Filipinos, both at home and abroad. You can see this with the pure joy of families reuniting with loved ones based abroad at the arrivals area. Upstairs, you'll see the bittersweet and sometimes tearful goodbyes as they separate with loved ones who will be going back to their adopted homelands abroad. You'll also see the excitement of young Filipinos who are making that barkada trip to some nearby country thanks to the low fares offered by the budget airlines. Meanwhile, you can see the nerves and sometimes the unfamiliarity with the travel process amongst the new OFWs who in some cases are making their first airplane flight to a place so far away from the familiar today for a better tomorrow for them and their families. Along with them, Filipino seafarers are starting new voyages with a flight usually departing out of Manila to their home ports. Filipinos are often referred to being global people. Whether at home or abroad, for better or for worse, Manila Airport is the hub of the Filipino. I definitely hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. This has been Flights in Asia. Thank you for watching and have a great day.